2 more days till the draft. I'll tell you the advantages of standing pat, moving back, and trading up, and even will tell you who is worthy for the Jaguars to trade up for on this edition of Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for joining Locked On Jaguars. I am the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast. My name is Tony Wiggins, and here it is your team every day. And we always thank you for making us your first listen. A quick reminder, we are free to subscribe to on our YouTube page. Just go over to Locked On Jaguars on YouTube. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, the like button. Also hit that bell so you get notifications each and every time we drop an episode. And wherever you get your audio podcast, make sure you tap into that location every single day so you do not miss an episode. Today's show is sponsored by and brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Shout out to the everydayers for joining us every single day, and you can be an everydayer too. All you got to do is join and listen every single day. Okay, so to move back or to move up in the draft from 17, that is the question. We will discuss what I believe the Jaguars' advantages are of doing three things: moving back, moving up, or standing pat. We'll talk about trade-worthy players. Who would you be targeting if you go up? How high do you have to go up to target certain players? And then reasons to move down and get more bites at the apple. So let me tell you what I think Trent Baalke's thinking. Trent said the other day at the luncheon that Jaguars GM Trent Baalke said the other day at the luncheon that the analytics people tell him to never, ever trade up, that you always want to keep your picks and even get more picks. Paraphrasing that last part, but that's what I took away from what he said. The goal is to get more bites at the apple, more darts to throw is what he said, actually. And I can understand that. I can understand because it's such a crapshoot, even though I don't think it's luck. I think there's some people that do it very well. Some people do it better than other folks. And that by it, I mean drafting. They enjoy the process. They know exactly what they want. Seems like Baltimore and Kansas City always know exactly what they want and they find a way to get it. But, the first part about drafting is knowing who you are and how you want to play, what your identity is. The other part is playing the game within the game. Do you move back and get more picks? Now, I would think that if you think that last year they played the game about getting Anton Harrison, they had to know who was and wasn't going to take an offensive lineman at that point. But I do think they still played around with it a little bit much. And then ended up with a bunch of picks that they tried to trade away. Now, I think, if I'm not mistaken, one of those picks ended up being a fifth-round pick that they used on Antonio Johnson. So that was a pretty good deal. It was a pretty good deal. But they moved back a couple of times, and they got the guy that they wanted in Anton Harrison. It's always risky when you play around with that, though. Like to get more bites at the apple, but you still want the guy that you want, right? There's some advantages to moving up, and there's some advantages to moving back. We'll make sure that we distinguish the two. Baalke also said that they wouldn't move up prior to the draft unless they knew exactly who they were going to get. And the only way you can know who you're going to get is if you move all the way up to number one. I do think realistically they could move up to like number 4 or number 5 and pretty much target someone who they want, even either Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, or Romo Dunes. They would be in the ballpark to get one of those guys, and I think that they know that. However, I'm going to take these guys at face value for what they say. They say that they don't move until the draft starts and names start to move, then they'll move. But we will talk about if they do move up, who would be the reasons and what the positions would be. We'll talk about that in segment 2, but I kind of gave you a hint already, right? And there's nothing that you can go up and get that position-wise that you can't touch at 17, by the way. Position-wise, obviously the players are going to be ranked different and a little bit higher, but position-wise. So here's the reason why it's not necessarily a big deal for the Jaguars to move, in my opinion. With so much talk about there being maybe 5 to 7 or 5 to 6 quarterbacks taken in the first 2 dozen picks, and with the Jaguars not being in the quarterback market, with at least 4 of those picks, probably 5 of those guys going before the Jaguars pick at 17, that pretty much takes their 17th pick and turns it into the 12th pick, in my opinion. That turns it into the 12th pick, in my opinion, because they're not going for a quarterback. So if there's 5 guys that's going to go in front of them, and I'm including Michael Penix in that bunch. And then the reason why I'm including is because the people sitting at 12 and 13 and 14, like Minnesota, if they don't move up, and then the 2 teams in the AFC West, Oakland and Denver. I mean, not Oakland, Las Vegas and Denver. I wonder when I'm going to stop saying that. Las Vegas and Denver. So there's some opportunity for guys that the Jaguars probably don't even have listed on their board or priority. Now, those quarterbacks will be listed on the board because those guys have to be listed on the board, so you know who's there for teams to move up from. But on the Jaguars priority list, you know those quarterbacks aren't high on the list because they have Trevor Lawrence, and they're going to give him an extension. And that's the one position, where we ain't trying to get no rotation whatsoever. No depth. You ain't using a first round pick on quarterback. That's out of the question. So the thing is so if you're already up to 12, and let's just say the Jaguars have had inter team discussions that they feel like the value board for offensive linemen, even though we talked about maybe an offensive lineman going in the first round yesterday, let's just assume that they have told their coaches and their scouts, find me a day 3 guy in the 4th round, right? Find me someone in the 4th round that I'm going to take. I got 2 4th round picks. That's where we're going to attack the line. So if that's the case now, if there's no quarterback and no offensive lineman on their minds, you have to wonder how many offensive linemen are going to go before 17. At least 3. At least 3. So if that's 5 quarterbacks and 3 offensive linemen, and then if you count Brock Bowers at tight end, who they have no plans, I don't believe, of taking, that's 9. That's 9 guys out of the first 17. So the Jaguars will be picking like 8th, right? In their own little world. Why would you move up? Let's just say 3 wide receivers do go in the top 10. That's 12. So now you're sitting at 5. They are going to get their choice of defensive lineman, edge, wide receiver, and corner. They're going to get it if they want it. What if all of that stuff happens, though, and then the Jaguars are sitting there, and there are 8 guys that they love, and they love to have either one of them. And maybe the one guy that they wanted, let's just say whoever their target was, whether it be Brian Thomas Jr. or, say, Quinyon Mitchell. What if he's gone, and the next group of guys they like, there's like a whole bunch of them? That would be the reason why you would trade back. I'm going to try to ponder who I believe the Jaguars, if they trade back, who would be the dude that they're moving back to say, you know what, that's the dude we're going to take, but we ain't going to take him at 17. We're going to move back. I got a feeling if they do that, it's going to be a defensive lineman. And I'll tell you which defensive lineman in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. Got to let you know first about today's sponsor, which is Game Time, man. Look, you remember when you used to procrastinate and do things at the last minute and somebody would say, don't make your lack of planning my emergency? You will hear none of that nonsense from Game Time because they specialize in your lack of planning being their emergency because of their last minute deals where you can save up to 60% off buying last minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. They have flash deals, zone deals, all in pricing, seat views. The lowest price guarantee on Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. That's right. All you got to do, man, is take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time and download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. I'm going to repeat that again. Now, terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On NFL, all one word, LOCKEDON, NFL, for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Second segment here on Locked On Jaguars. We're at your team every day. We always thank you for making us your first listen, talking about possible trade scenarios and sitting still at 17 or going up and moving back. Trade worthy players that I go up for either one of those wide receivers. It's going to cost you. It's going to cost you a lot of money, man. If you go up to 4 or 5, it's going to cost you next year's first round pick, probably your first, second, maybe even a third. It's going to cost you a lot. So you have to now ask yourself, if you're the Jaguars, do you take a chance at swinging for the fences for a franchise level wide receiver, or number one? Do you do it? There's 3 of them. There's 3 of them, I believe, up there. The only time that will hurt you, and as long as your guy, if you move up, as long as your guy can play, that's fine. But I'll tell you where it stings a little bit, just a little bit. If you move up and your guy's pretty good, and then one of these other guys blow up the way Justin Jefferson, who got picked so late, did, or the way Devontae Adams did. And then they blow up, and you give up all of that stuff just to move up 10, 12 picks. And then a guy that gets picked right where you are, whether it be Brian Thomas Jr. or somebody else, they just blow the top off the league. And they're just as good as the guy you gave up. Nobody will care, because as long as your guy can play. But boy, if you move up and your guy can't play, because I'm going to tell you, nobody talks about this part of the draft. Nobody talks about this, but this is the flat out truth. We all can look at the prospect list. We all can look right now and say, you know, there's almost a consensus of who the top 50 or top 100 is, and it's all good, man. All of our own lists, all of our own preferences, the guys that we like, we're going to be wrong. There's going to be a lot of us that are wrong. You know, I said us. I ain't say y'all. I said we, us. There's going to be a lot of us. We're going to have guys that we love, and they can't play a lick in the NFL. Because what happens is you don't know what's going to happen when those guys get to the league. And this is a gladiator sport, man. We look at it and we play John Madden and we do our fantasy. And sometimes we don't understand that there's a car wreck going on like every 45 seconds out there, bro. And everybody's not built for it. Some people are built for high school and college or looking good, but they're not built for it. That's why like Heisman Trophy winners and guys like that don't always pan out in the league, because the guys that have all the success in college, it doesn't necessarily mean it translates to the NFL. And we're all going to be wrong about it. There's one of those receivers, I guarantee you, one of those dudes, one of those top 3 guys, and I like them all as prospects. Somebody ain't going to be as good as they're supposed to be. So when you start talking about moving up, it's one thing to sit where you are and miss on a pick. There's a whole other thing when you miss on a pick that you moved up and traded up for, and it turns out to burn you. There's some teams that have gotten away with that in the past, like Chicago didn't get away with it with Trubisky. And what makes that even worse, they moved up to take Mitch Trubisky, and Patrick Mahomes was sitting right there. See, that's the kind of stuff I was talking about. That's what I was talking about. Now, the 49ers traded 3 first-round picks, moved up for Trey Lance. He never really played for him, except a couple of, here and there. Now he's in Dallas for a 4th-round pick. But they got away with something because they got Mr. Irrelevant. The last player in the draft, they got him, Brock Purdy, and guess what? He's taking them to the championship game. So it worked out pretty good, right? I'm sure they love all of their picks back. They figure out if they could have had their picks and Brock Purdy, that would have been better. And this is the danger in moving instead of staying there, because if you go miss, you might as well miss with just holding one pick instead of trading everything and missing. So yeah, I wouldn't move up for anything else other than that in this draft. It's got to be one of those receivers. And for me to move up to get one of those top 3, it just must mean, hey, look, I haven't had much luck if I'm Trent Baalke with wide receivers. the better these three guys, the valuation is really, really high. I don't think the miss rate is high. That's the only way you go up and get them, because if you sit there and think about it, you might sit there and not even get your fourth choice in Brian Thomas Jr. He might be gone. And then you got to start looking at Adonai Mitchell and all of these other guys, and whether or not you think they're worthy with some of their stuff, some of the things that you aren't sure about. I might move up a few spots to go get Quinion Mitchell to jump in front of the Colts. If he is my number one corner, and to me, like for instance, Jim Nagy at the Senior Bowl, he points out that he's 0.2 of a second faster. That's a 4.3 versus a 4.5 over Terry and Arnold. He's a little bit bigger also, right? Like if you have him as the clear guy, you don't have any questions about him tackling the way that you have questions about Nate Wiggins or his weight. If he is the cleanest prospect at that position, can you go up to 12 or 13 and give up a third or a fourth or maybe both and then move up? Sure. Because everyone knows, I've said it, he's the one guy that if he's there, within reason, of course, I would run so fast up there and put that, like if Joe Alt is there, of course, but he's not going to be, right? But I would run that thing up there so fast. If Quinion Mitchell is there, do the Jaguars feel the same way? If they move back, what position would they be targeting? I believe it's defensive line, but they'll be targeting something else that's very, very important to mention. And I'm going to do it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. But first, the Locked On NFL mock draft is available now. Find the ultimate 6-episode series on Locked On NFL Draft. It's on Locked On NFL Draft to hear who the local Locked On experts are picking for every NFL franchise, with live reactions from local college football experts and even the fantasy football angle. The Locked On NFL mock draft available now on Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Johnny Newton is the dude that I say that they should target if they want to move back. But what they'll do when they move back is get more picks for another position that I think that they ought to be looking at trying to target on day 2. And we'll discuss that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by BetterHelp. I have used therapy for more than one thing. Unfortunately, death in the family, how to handle pain management, and lately, how to spread my time out to all of the people and all of the things that I want to do in life. Time management is super important. It could also be a source of stress if you don't know how to keep yourself on track. And sometimes all we need is the opportunity to get something off our chest, big or small. Certain things can really start to get to you, and it could cause you to go into a shell. Better Yet can help you with that, man. If you're thinking about considering therapy, then give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. And gotta let you know today's sponsor is FanDuel. That's right. FanDuel is the absolute truth, man. It is NHL and NBA playoff time, and I'm telling you, FanDuel is, as always, there for you and ready to roll. Playoffs don't get more exciting than that, man. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets. Guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And third and final segment here on Locked On Jaguars. We're at your team every day. We always thank you for making us your first listen here. I am Tony Wiggins, the host of Locked On Jaguars. Talking about the Jaguars possibly moving up, staying where they are, or moving back. We talked about them moving up. We talked about them staying where they are, and we'll believe that that's what they're going to do. Maybe around the ninth pick, that's when you probably should start waking up to the idea that the Jaguars, if they're going to move, that's when they're going to strike the ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, right up in that area. That gives me an idea that they know exactly the guy that they want and they hope is going to be there. And I'm guessing that guy is Quentin Mitchell. That's just my guess. Um, what could they move back from? The scenario has to line up. The board still has to line up. A bunch of guys have to go. If 5 quarterbacks go in front of them and maybe 4 offensive linemen and 3 receivers and Brock Bowers, that'll be 8, along with the 5 quarterbacks, that's 13. If a whole bunch of dudes that, like if Jackson Powers Johnson goes to Seattle at 16, and now the Jaguars are sitting there at 17, and maybe their top choice is gone, and there's a whole bunch of guys that they have ranked there, and they can count maybe 10 to 12 picks where to them there ain't no big difference in talent, right? So if they want to come back towards 27, 28, 29, Arizona's there at 27 so far. They're there at 27. The Bears, not the Bears, there's talk that the Bears may want to come back into the first round. That's a possibility. But I don't expect the Jaguars to move out because of the 5th-year option. I don't expect to move out of the first round. But there's some teams in the back. Buffalo is thought to be targeting a wide receiver. There's some people that believe they can sit right where they are and get the receiver that they want. Maybe the Chiefs want to come up and grab a left tackle. And the Chiefs are sitting in the back. There's talk that the 49ers would want to come up and grab a tackle if they don't want to sit back and wait on like Jordan Morgan and those guys, if they want to come up and if they want to get in that Graham Barton sweepstakes in that area, or whoever's left amongst those tackles. The Jaguars will have a chance to move back. But what they'll be moving back for, I think if they move back, that's going to put them in a prime spot to take an interior defensive lineman. But more importantly, it'll probably give them another 3rd-round pick. And that 3rd-round pick then could be used to help them move back up to the top of the 3rd round, or maybe even catapult themselves back into the 2nd round if they want to move around a little bit based on what it is what are the rest of the compensation that they'll get. And if that's the case, that's where you can start to see them maybe wanting to hone in if they get an extra 2nd round pick or an extra 3rd round pick that'll allow them to move up. And that's when you'll start seeing maybe the Ricky Pearsalls, or if they don't get that wide receiver in the 1st round, that they'll be positioning themselves right there in the 2nd round to get the wide receivers that are considered the top or the middle of the 2nd round, and go ahead and get somebody to help Trevor Lawrence as far as a weapon on offense. So I could see them doing that, and then hitting the corner spot with their other pick, because they will have 2. They'll have a pick, and they'll have the 48th pick, and if they move back, probably an extra 3rd and an extra 4th. So they'll probably give them 2 thirds and 3 4th round picks, and that's where you either see them staying pat or start to move up. But I expect them to go offense. If they don't go offense with the 1st round pick, I do expect them to go offense with the 2nd round pick. I absolutely do. They have to get more weapons. There's a lot of talk about Devontae Walker too. And if they're talking like that, that means the Jaguars are looking for a pure X receiver. I think Ricky Pearsall, even though everybody has slotted him for the slot, I think he can be an X. I do. I just think he can play all over. I think he can play outside. There's some guys that were good X receivers. They just weren't big. Antonio Brown was a good X. Steve Smith. There have been guys to 5'10", 5'9", and Pearsall 6 feet 6'1". I think he can be an X receiver. I think sometimes we just slot guys based on the way that they run and how they move. I think he can play outside. I truly do. I truly do. You have to wonder, though, at this point, are the Jaguars sort of desperate? Are they desperate to finally, for people to know that they went out and did everything they could to surround Trevor Lawrence with a playmaker? And that's why you have to think that there is some possibilities that they just move up to a more surefire pick and take an offensive player. If it's not going to be an offensive player, they're probably going to sit right where they are at 17. There's an argument to be made at on all three levels, moving up, moving back, or standing pat. I'll tell you what, though, I do agree with this with Trent Baalke. There's no reason to move anywhere until the draft starts. So when you start seeing how the board is going to go and how it's going to start to fall, and that's when I think the Jaguars will be put to the test to see what it is they're going to do. It's a really exciting time. I'm going to be at the draft party on Thursday. Once the pick is announced or the Jaguars make a trade, I'll immediately go in and record whatever I have to go in and record. And then once I leave the facility and come back to the Wiggins studio here where we record Locked On Jaguars, we'll do a postcast and then probably go ahead and do a live and make that the next day's show. But tomorrow we're going to have even more stuff that we'll hear at the last minute. It's quiet. It's really, really quiet. And that's good. It's good. There's not a lot of noise being made right now because I told you if we were hearing anything, that would mean that the team is not doing their job. You guys keep doing your job and tuning in every single day, and make sure you also check out Locked On Sports Today. It is the first 24/7 all sports streaming channel on YouTube. That's right. They can also be found and available on the Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Man, I'm telling you, I am excited. I'm so excited. I'm a little bit melancholy because I want to make sure we handle these next couple of days with care. This is a chance for the Jacksonville Jaguars to really, really get good and move in a positive step forward. Remember now, there's also this thing that they have to deal with making themselves more of a physical team. You can't cherry pick it. You can't just do that one at a time and think one player is going to change it. But at some point, they will still continue to add to the infrastructure, to the lines of scrimmage on both sides of the ball in order to be a more physical football team. Could it be round one if they move back? That is highly, highly possible. We'll make sure that we continue to monitor that. As long as you guys know to be here every single day on Locked On Jaguars, because it's your team every day. We always thank you for making us your first listen. We'll see you next time.